Hey guys, tonight we're heading out into the windswept emptiness of the Hungarian plains, where the grass moves like sea foam and shepherds whisper into the dark. You're walking a narrow dirt track just after sunset, your boots soft against centuries of sheep droppings and dried thistle. Around you, it's too quiet. No chirps, no wind. Just the sound of your breath slightly too fast for someone who claims not to be nervous. And that's fair. You're on the Puszta now, Hungary's oldest grazing land, vast and flat, like the surface of an eerie landlocked ocean. These fields have seen more hooves than human footsteps. They've soaked in centuries of stories, most of them muttered by firelight and never written down. The locals say the wolves howl less loudly during full moons, but that's not because they're scared. It's because something worse is already here. You probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your current location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're listening from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The man walking ahead of you is called András. He's a Juhas, one of the old shepherd caste still clinging to the traditional ways. His coat is made of thick felted wool black as night, and his staff is carved with whorls you don't quite recognize. He walks with the rhythm of someone who knows the land will never trip him, only test him. Around your feet shuffle sheep bellies low to the ground, heads twitching whenever a cloud passes in front of the moon. You're not exactly sure how many are in this flock. The count keeps changing. Or maybe it's your eyes. You ask András how many wolves come down from the hills. He chuckles once deep in his chest. The wolves, he repeats, then spits into the grass. They don't come when the moon is full. That's when we watch for her. You press naturally. Her, he doesn't answer, but he does tighten the grip on his staff. Historically, the Hordobagi plains you're crossing now were shaped not just by nature, but by empire. Roman legions once marched cattle through here. Ottoman caravans passed in silence, and later Austro-Hungarian officials tried to modernize the shepherd caste only to fail spectacularly. These herders remained deeply independent, answering only to weather and stars. András points to a tangle of trees in the distance. That was once a sarda, a kind of outlaw inn, he says, but it burned on a moon like this. They never rebuilt it. The fire, you ask? No fire, he says flatly. Only ash. Fell like snow. Whole flock gone by morning. It's a local superstition, you assume. But fringe historians have long speculated that Hungarian shepherds preserved pre-Christian lunar rituals masked inside Catholic feast days. The shepherds won't confirm it, but they always know the exact moon cycle. Always. You reach a small rise. The flock hesitates. There's something oddly mathematical about how they stop not randomly, but in a line, their bodies' stiff ears pointed not at you, but up. You follow their gaze. The moon's rising now slowly but impossibly large, a white coin balanced on the sky's edge. For a second, it seems close enough to touch, and in that second, András suddenly begins humming. It's not a song. It's a tone, low, repetitive, almost like a chant, except you feel it more in your stomach than your ears. The sheep settle. You don't. That's for them, he explains, without stopping the chant. You ask again for who? He shrugs. The ones who walk behind the moonlight. Fringe folklore collected in the 19th century mentions a shadow folk, holjarok, or moonwalkers, who were neither living nor dead nor even truly spirits. They were shapes that formed only when the moon reached its highest phase, and only in places flat enough for no shadow to escape. The Puszta is one such place. Scholars argue whether these tales were misunderstood metaphors, perhaps for raiders' disease or night terrors, but there's a troubling consistency to them across generations. You pass a twisted willow tree. Something swings from it, just a sack of dried herbs maybe, but you note how András deliberately doesn't look at it. Are you ever scared out here, you ask? He thinks for a long while. Scared, he says. No, but sometimes I leave my own shadow behind. I walk faster then. You don't understand until much later what he means. The sheep stir again. One gives a startled bleat, though you see nothing nearby. You turn slowly, scan the horizon. Just grass. Just wind. But you do notice something now. Your shadow is facing the wrong direction. The next morning comes, though you're not convinced the sun ever really rose. The sky lightens to a color somewhere between ash and stale milk, and the moon lingers far longer than it should. You wake on the edge of the flock, a wool blanket draped over you that you definitely didn't have the night before. András is already moving staff in hand, his dark felt coat trailing behind him like a shadow trying to catch up. The sheep graze in eerie silence. Even the bells those tiny, tinny ones strung around their necks don't seem to ring. You stretch, feeling the stiffness of sleep, and something else. A memory. No more like the edge of a dream where someone whispered your name, but you couldn't turn your head to look. Andras points with his staff toward the endless plain. We walk. The herd remembers the path. The puszta, the Hungarian word for this sweeping expanse, is unforgiving in its simplicity. No hills, no woods. Just flattened grassland stretching for kilometers in every direction, dotted occasionally with bone-white cow skulls, salt-lick rocks, and abandoned wells. It was once part of a vast sea millions of years ago, and now under your boots are layers of ancient sediment and forgotten civilizations. That's the thing about this land, it's old. Not just in years, but in memory. Even when the wind is still, you feel like it's listening, and sometimes answering. You ask Andras how he navigates when every direction looks the same. The sheep know, he says. So long as one survives, the flock remembers. He taps his staff twice, and sure enough, the lead sheep begins moving. The rest follow. Historically, the puszta is part of the Hortobágy National Park, one of the oldest protected landscapes in Europe, and home to Hungary's traditional shepherding culture. The Juhás aren't just workers. They're the last inheritors of an oral system of weather lore, animal behavior, and lunar tracking that predates most written Hungarian history. But ask a Juhás about history and he'll shrug. The land speaks louder than scrolls. You come across a clearing dotted with low mounds, maybe graves, maybe old herding posts. There's a post sticking from the earth carved with unfamiliar runes, something halfway between a crescent and a spiral repeating over and over again. You reach out to touch it, but Andras grabs your wrist. Don't disturb that. It remembers what we forget. You ask him what it is. He shrugs. Boundary marker. Between what and what? He pauses. Between when and when? And that's when you realize the fear here isn't about wolves. It's about time. Or more precisely about the times that fold back onto themselves when the moon is too full and the world forgets which version of itself it's supposed to be. One sheep bleats suddenly and darts sideways. You turn to look and see nothing except a patch of grass pressed down in a circular pattern, as if something heavy had been lying there, or crouching. Andras doesn't even look at it. Instead, he mutters, "Don't name what you don't see." Fringe shepherding lore includes a curious belief that to name something under the full moon is to bind it to you, which sounds poetic until you realize it includes even sightings. Some shepherds would purposely walk with their eyes half shut on full moon nights to avoid claiming what they glimpsed. Modern folklorists call this protective misrecognition, a way of surviving by pretending you didn't notice the thing that noticed you first. Historians still argue whether this developed from shamanic traditions or as a defense mechanism in times of trauma and war. You're starting to understand it now. The air gets warmer as noon approaches, but no one takes off their coat. The sheep doze. The wind picks up and carries with it the low sound of flutes. No, it's not quite flutes. More like wind-brushing hollow reeds, melodic but off. And when you ask where the music is coming from, Andras says, without blinking, "From yesterday." You don't press further. Later, the two of you stop at a stone trough filled with cloudy water. Andras dips his hands and cups some toward his mouth, and then spits it back out with a frown. "Moon's been here," he mutters. You raise an eyebrow. "The water tastes of her," he adds. "Too clean." This doesn't make sense. You dip your fingers into the trough, it's cool, ordinary, but as you pull your hand away, you notice your skin smells faintly of mint and ashes. "Don't worry," he says. "She only marks, doesn't always follow." A mainstream historical fact often left out of textbooks is that shepherds in the Carpathian Basin were notorious for their ritualistic relationship with the moon. They tracked lambing and shearing cycles by it, yes, but also decisions like when to bury their dead. Lunar phases were consulted before births, before marriages, and especially before migrations. The crescent was lucky, the full was complicated. A white heron flies overhead and every sheep looks up in eerie unison, necks, craned eyes unblinking. You stare too, and for a split second you swear the bird casts no shadow. You glance back at the sheep, still watching. Not the bird anymore, but the sky. And this time so are you. The sheep do something odd that afternoon. They begin to circle slowly, deliberately, heads lowered, hooves, tracing a rough spiral pattern in the grass. Not running, not panicked. Just moving with purpose. You and Andras stand silently at the edge of the flock as they form concentric rings. 2, 3, maybe 4 rotations deep. It's mesmerizing, hypnotic even. You step closer. Don't stand in the middle, Andras warns, without turning. You pause. Why not? He tilts his head toward the sheep. Because if you do, they'll trap you between time. Now, to your modern ears, that sounds like pure poetry. But you remember that boundary marker from earlier, the one he said separated when from when, and something in your gut tells you he's not being metaphorical. According to mainstream Hungarian ethnography, shepherding communities in the Hortobágy had deeply rooted beliefs about spatial rituals. Spiral circles and even fence arrangements followed traditional patterns intended not just to contain animals, but to align with lunar movements. The pusta, after all, doesn't offer natural landmarks. The patterns on the earth had to become the only compass. Fringe reports go further that shepherds would dance or walk in spiral formations during eclipses to confuse whatever spirits rode the moonlight. Supposedly, this misdirection made it harder for anything otherworldly to settle on a soul. Historians still argue whether these dances were ritual protections or just practical ways to corral flocks. The records are mostly oral, and the ones who knew the truth are buried deep beneath this grass. The sheep finally stop circling and resume grazing as if nothing happened. You notice a single black ewe has wandered away, chewing calmly near a stone outcropping. She blinks slowly as if time lags slightly behind her. Andras doesn't seem surprised. They always choose one to bear it, he says. You ask Bear what? He hesitates, then says, the forgetting. Again, you don't understand, but you will. He sits on a fallen log and begins carving something into a chunk of driftwood with a hooked blade. His motions are precise. You glance over his shoulder and see that he's whittling a familiar shape, a spiral, then a crescent, then a long, straight line bisecting them. Wolves don't do this, he murmurs. What do you mean? He hands you the wood. Found this same mark on a sheep's skull once. No bite marks, no blood, just this etched where the horn had been. You feel a chill pass through your fingertips holding the wood. Later, you cross a patch of hardened soil where the grass refuses to grow. A rectangle maybe 15 feet long, perfectly even. Not a single blade within it. Not a footprint. Just dry, cracked dirt. What was here, you ask? Andras stares at it like it's something breathing. Sheepfold, he says. And now, he says nothing. Modern archaeologists working in the region have uncovered similar unexplained dead zones where neither grass nor moss will take root. Soil samples show no toxicity, no salt imbalance. Locals avoid them reflexively, and shepherds refuse to rebuild near them. Some believe these spots mark the site of long-lost sky burials or hidden moon altars. Others say the land itself simply remembers what it doesn't want back. The sky begins to dim and that uneasy silver tinge creeps across the plain again. You realize the moon is already climbing too early. You mention this to Andras and he squints upward, then grimaces. Full moon rising before sunset, he mutters. Bad alignment. Why? Because then she casts two shadows before night even begins. Your mouth goes dry. That evening, you and Andras camp beneath a weathered wooden lean-to half buried in tall grass. It creaks in the breeze like it remembers older winds. A small fire crackles between you and the sheep's sleep, unusually close, their warmth pressing against your back. You hear a howl in the distance. Finally wolves. But Andras barely reacts. They won't come close, he says. You raise an eyebrow. Because they know what else is walking tonight. There's something oddly comforting in the certainty of his fear. Wolves at least are simple flesh-teeth hunger. Whatever else might be wandering the pusta tonight isn't governed by instinct. And then you smell something. Not smoke, not livestock. Something metallic, cold, like water that hasn't moved in 100 years. You glance around and notice the grass nearest the fire has gone perfectly still despite the wind tugging at your collar. You ask Andras if he smells it too. He doesn't reply. He just places the clapperless bell beside his boots. And that's when you realize you haven't heard a single sheep bell all day. Not one. The silence isn't just around you now, it's inside you. No bells, no bleats, not even the fire crackling. Just your breath and the rustling of dry grass brushing your coat. And then that smell sharpens. It's as if the air has been steeped in cold iron and lavender. You think of hospital corridors and old graves, the kind of scent that doesn't just hit the nose, it hangs behind the eyes. The sheep are all lying down now, still as if carved from marble. Their eyes stay open, reflecting the firelight in wide, glinting orbs that don't blink. You reach out toward one instinctively, but Andras stops you with a low hiss. They're listening, he mutters. To what? He shakes his head. You mean to whom? Andras slowly unrolls a thin cloth bundle. Inside a set of curved knives, each with tiny runes carved into the hilt. Not decorative ones, these marks are crude, etched by hand and uneven. He selects one that looks oldest, its blade dulled but steady. and places it in the grass beside him. This is if the moon goes wrong. You blink. Goes wrong. He finally looks up at you, face flickering in the fire's dim light. It's already wrong, he says. It rose too early, didn't it? Then without warning, a sheep screams. But that's not the right word for the sound. It isn't fear. It's recognition. You whip around. The sheep has bolted to the edge of the clearing toward a salt-lick stone one of those white hunks farmers use to supplement their flock's diet. Only this one is red. Not blood-stained fully red like it's been painted or dyed or rusted from within. The sheep circles it frantically, panting and bleeding in terror, and then collapses without touching it. You and Andras run over. The animal isn't wounded, no bite, no visible injury, but it's limp, staring upward at the moon with dilated eyes. Blood without teeth, he mutters. You reach down and feel the sheep's side. Warm, breathing, but slow. You glance at the salt lick again. There's a faint shimmer to it like frost on its edges, despite the warm air. Is this normal, you ask? Andras snorts. Normal for who? For the sheep or for her? Now you're really listening. The fire behind you has started crackling again, but the grass hasn't resumed swaying. And that metallic smell is stronger. You glance up. The moon has passed the treetops. It shouldn't be that high yet. Mainstream agricultural journals record the use of salt licks across European pastures since at least the early 17th century. They help animals balance their diet, especially in grasslands like the Hordabagi. But according to fringe rural folklore, stones taken from dead wells, old dry mineral springs were avoided for salt processing. The belief was that water once drawn from those wells had been touched by something not entirely natural. Andras points at the red lick. That's from the dry well near Circuito. I warned him not to use it. Warned who? He looks tired. Doesn't matter. The sheep listens better. You both drag the collapsed ewe away and lay her near the others. She's still breathing, but her limbs twitch in odd rhythms like she's dreaming something unpleasant and ancient. You notice her hooves are smeared with something faintly silver. You start to ask, but Andras is already walking to a small pack, buried under a tarp. He pulls out a bottled dark green glass sealed with wax and uncorks it. The air fills with the sour-sweet scent of fermented fruit and herbs. He pours a drop on the ewe's lips. She jolts, then goes still again. The palinka's for the spirit, not the body, he mutters. Just keeps it from being pulled too far. The fire flickers again. For a moment it burns blue. You say nothing. Historians still debate whether pre-Christian Hungarian rituals were entirely replaced by Catholicism or merely hidden beneath its symbols. Evidence suggests that Palinka Hungary's traditional fruit brandy was sometimes used in folk rites as a soul anchor, especially when dealing with sleepwalking trances or moonstruck animals. That bottle. It wasn't for celebration. It was for rescue. Andras sits back down and begins sharpening one of the knives with a stone that looks suspiciously like a sheep's femur. You look out into the dark. Still no wolves. Still no wind. Still that red salt lick faintly glowing. You get the distinct feeling that you were meant to see it tonight. That something waited for the moon to be just wrong enough, just bright enough, just early enough for you to be right here. Watching, the sheep begins to breathe steadily again. But the air hasn't changed. The fire crackles. And for the briefest second just before you close your eyes, you swear you see a second shadow standing behind Andras. You don't sleep much that night. You doze, maybe your eyes close, your breathing slows, but some part of you stays on watch. A shallow, brittle kind of sleep. The kind soldiers call half under. And every time your body begins to drift into deeper rest, you're pulled back by the sense that something is leaning just over your shoulder. Watching. Not breathing. Just waiting for your head to tilt a little too far. Sometime near dawn you rise, not because you're ready, but because the moon hasn't moved. Still high, still full, still wrong. Andras is already up. You find him sitting just beyond the fire pit, wrapping something in coarse cloth, something long, heavy, and oddly shaped. You think it's the red salt lick at first. But when he ties it off and slings it over his back like a burden, you realize it's too angular. What's that, you ask? He glances at you. A warning. To who? He doesn't answer, just starts walking. You follow him across the flatness of the pusta. The sun tries to rise, but fails. The light is pale diluted, like milk left out too long. It doesn't warm you. The wind is back, but it moves sideways, dragging dust across your boots instead of lifting it. You feel as though the land is being smudged. Around mid-morning, you reach a cluster of weather-worn trees, thin, stunted. They crowd together like they're afraid of something bigger. Beneath them sits a ring of stones, flat, mossy, laid in a circle you recognize. It's identical to the shape the sheep formed yesterday. Andras approaches, kneels, and places the wrapped object at the circle's center. Then he unwraps it. It's a sheep skull, clean, polished, but carved. Not just one symbol, many. The spiral, yes. But also zigzags, suns, crescents, and one very odd figure that looks like a stick man falling upward. You step closer. Andras gently rests a small bundle of dried thistle beside it. "What is this?" you whisper. He replies simply, "A line." "A line between what?" He looks you dead in the eye. "Between being seen and being noticed." And then he begins to speak. Not to you. Not in Hungarian. Not in any language you recognize. Just a low mutter, rhythmic, soft, like words from a place before grammar. A prayer, a chant. Maybe something older. The sound of it makes your molars ache. The sheep nearby stir as if sensing an invisible thread being pulled tighter. According to mainstream historians, pre-modern Hungarian shepherds often marked territory with skulls not as trophies but as warnings. Some were inscribed with talismans believed to protect against theft or illness. But these carvings aren't protective. They're directional. Signposts. Fringe interpretations of these practices suggest something more unsettling, that certain parts of the pusta weren't just dangerous, they were passageways. Not into physical places, but out of sequence. Paths between events. Moonlit wormholes in a way that only opened under specific conditions. And worse, that the sheep were often the first to cross. You ask Andras if the skull belonged to the sheep from last night. He shakes his head. "No, this one's older. It died before I was born." You blink. "Then how do you know it matters now?" He smiles faintly. "Because it started bleeding again." You look closer. Sure enough, one of the spiral carvings has a dark line seeping from it. Not fresh, not wet, but unmistakably red. You reach out. "Don't touch," he says sharply. "It remembers your hand." You pull back. The wind picks up. But not from a direction you recognize. And this time it's carrying a sound. Not wolves, not sheep, a bell. But not the one you saw Andras carry. This one rings with a clapper, a proper chime. And yet, it doesn't come from the direction of any village. Not from a chapel. Not even from anything physical. It just hangs in the air like fog. You glance up. The clouds are forming in the shape of a spiral. And in the exact center of the spiral, the moon shines through. Still full, still present, still wrong. Andras stands, brushes his hands on his coat and says, "Time to move." To where? He gives you the smallest smile yet. Forward, hopefully. You walk on. Later that afternoon, the sheep find a patch of soil. They seem unusually interested in nudging it, bleeding softly, even pawing at it like dogs unearthing a bone. You kneel down. At first you see nothing. Then your fingers hit something hard. You clear the soil. A bell. A small one, no bigger than your palm, wrapped in old cloth. It's made of iron, but smoother than you'd expect. Almost melted. And it's warm. You hold it up. It doesn't ring. You shake it harder. Nothing. You show it to Andras. He pales. "Put it back." You hesitate. He steps forward and says again, "Put it back." That one's already rung. You bury it. But the warmth stays on your skin long after. And as night begins to creep up on the horizon again, a terrifying thought settles in your chest. What if these aren't warnings? What if they're invitations? The second night comes quicker than the first. There's a strange elasticity to time here. You wake, you walk, you eat something bland and unmemorable from a tin, and suddenly it's twilight again. The sheep begin to cluster before the sky even dims, as if they've seen the script already and know how this scene plays out. Tonight the moon rises before the last daylight fades. No gradient, no easing, just light that isn't yours. You try not to look up, but it's hard. The thing is huge now, unnaturally swollen and closer somehow, as if a coin's been pressed to the firmament and the sky can't breathe around it. Andras seems tense. He moves slowly, checking the perimeter of the makeshift camp over and over. This time he doesn't light a fire. Instead, he places the clapperless bell on a rock and surrounds it with a ring of stones, each marked with a scratch or a smear of ash. You point to the setup. What is that supposed to do? Warn us, he mutters. Or confuse her. Depends on the night. The thing about this bell, it's wrong. A bell without a clapper is like a lock with no keyhole. It shouldn't exist. And yet, Andras treats it with reverence. The metal is dark, not quite iron, not quite bronze, almost green in the light. A patina of centuries clings to it, despite it being spotless. He tells you my grandfather found it hanging from a dead tree. The tree had no leaves in June. Does it ring, you ask? Only once, he says, for each person. There's a long silence after that. The sheep stay unnaturally close tonight. They press together tightly, heads buried in each other's shoulders, not out of warmth, but as if trying to hide from something they can't close their eyes to. Around midnight, you hear a soft tink. Not a bell, not exactly. More like the sound of glass tapping on a bone. You hold your breath. It comes again. Tink. You scan the horizon, heart climbing your throat. And then you see her, far off, barely visible through the moonlight haze. A figure. She stands completely still, tall, slender arms at her sides. A long shawl flows from her shoulders, dragging through the grass like mist. No face, no motion, just presence. And somehow you know she sees you. She's not moving, you whisper. She doesn't have to, Andras says. You're already walking toward her. You snap your head to him. What? He nods downward. You look at your feet. They've already left camp. You've taken 3 steps without realizing it. No memory of moving. No decision made. Just action triggered like a dreamer following a whisper. You stumble back, suddenly breathless. That's why we don't light fires tonight, Andras murmurs. The flames reach out. You both sit in the dark. The figure doesn't move. Hours pass, or maybe just minutes. Eventually she disappears, not vanishing, but folding. Like paper pulled inward until it's part of the moonlight itself. She was never there, except she definitely was. Mainstream historians agree that the Horda-Bagi region was steeped in lunar superstitions going back to the Bronze Age. Certain stones placed in circles or spiral paths have been found scattered across the plains, clearly positioned with astronomical intent. But the most curious are the silent bells. Artifacts shaped like bells, but with no clappers or hanging hardware, sometimes buried with livestock or hidden inside abandoned wells. Fringe theories claim these were lunar nullifiers, ritual objects used to mask sound, not make it. Some even say they were cast from melted weaponry taken during the Turkish Wars, which gives them an eerie origin, instruments of death repurposed for silence. You glance again at the bell by the rock. No sound, no movement, but you feel it watching. You lie back on your blanket and try to sleep. The moon doesn't dim. Your eyes close, and then from the distance, a hum. Not music, not a voice. Just a vibration in the earth so subtle it rattles your back teeth. You open your eyes, and there, floating 6 inches above the grass, is a girl. Small, thin, wearing a plain linen dress. Eyes wide, completely black. She doesn't blink. You sit up slowly. She tilts her head, not curiously, but like she's listening for a command you haven't heard yet. You don't move. She points at the bell, not the one by the rock, the one in your bag. The one you buried yesterday. The one you didn't really bury. You reach for it, and she smiles. Not sweetly, but like someone remembering an old joke whose punchline is you. And just like that, she's gone. No wind, no sound, just absence. And the next morning, the grass where she floated has grown taller than everywhere else. You don't mention the floating girl to Andras right away. Not because you're afraid he won't believe you. Quite the opposite, you're afraid he will. Because if he nods and says yes, that happens, then it becomes real. It means this place isn't just weird, it's aware. And whatever's out here isn't just wandering, it's choosing. Instead, you walk beside him at dawn as the sheep shuffle forward, already forming their silent, drifting formation. The ground feels softer under your boots today, damp even though it hasn't rained. The air is warmer, heavy with the scent of turned soil and distant mold. The dogs are acting strange, not barking, not hurting. Just lying near the edges of the flock, eyes locked on the horizon, not following movement. Just staring as though watching a slow storm the humans can't yet see. Is it always like this, you ask quietly? Andras chews a blade of grass, only when the moon stays too long. You glance up. Sure enough, it's still visible, even in full daylight, pale and watchful, refusing to set. She wants something, he adds, not looking at you. Who is she exactly, you ask? His eyes remain on the sheep, the one whose steps where wolves fear to. Mainstream folklore across Eastern Europe contains dozens of moon goddesses and female night spirits, many with ties to animal behavior and sleep paralysis. But in Hungarian legend, Holdasoni the Moon Woman is a particularly elusive figure. Rarely named directly, she appears in fragments. Lullabies that trail off midline embroidery that includes one too many threads or stories of children who return after being lost, but quieter and with colder hands. Fringe accounts link her to full moon mimics, entities that imitate loved ones or livestock, but cannot cast a shadow. In some tales, they approach from behind. In others, they arrive early before the person even thinks to look for them. You don't realize you've slowed until you see the sheep parting around something up ahead. A girl. Not the floating one, not exactly, but familiar. She's sitting on a salt-lick stone in broad daylight, barefoot, picking at her toes. Pale hair. Dressed too thin for the weather. No expression. The sheep keep their distance. Not afraid, just uncertain. Like they can't figure out whether she's real. Andras doesn't react at all. Just walks past her. You hesitate, then follow. Wait, you hiss. You saw her right. Of course. And you're just not worried. She's not for us, he replies. Not yet. You glance back. She's gone. You're starting to understand what shepherds really fear. Not wolves. Wolves leave tracks. Bite marks. They howl and tear and flee when hurt. Wolves obey rules. This she does not. You travel in silence for a while until you reach a low ridge. Beyond it lies a small stone enclosure, half collapsed, covered in moss and chalky residue. It's an old sheep pen, circular about the size of a backyard swimming pool. And it smells strange. Not rot, not waste, like burnt sugar and cold iron. Andras stops at the edge. This is where it happened. You ask where what happened. He hesitates, then says where the flock was left overnight. And in the morning, only their wool remained. Your stomach tightens. What do you mean only their wool? He crouches, runs a hand along the stones. No bones, no blood, just the fleece. Still warm. Mainstream historical records from the 1800s report at least 3 incidents in the Hortobagi where entire flocks vanished overnight. Official explanations blame thieves, wolves, and disease, but none accounted for the lack of remains or the eyewitness reports of a second moon hovering above the pens. Fringe interpretations suggest these events correlate with lunar perigees when the moon is closest to Earth. During these times, gravitational anomalies and magnetic disturbances may influence animal behavior and even human perception. But others say it's simpler than that. The sheep weren't taken. They were undone. You kneel beside Andras and pick up a tuft of wool still lodged in a crack. It crumbles in your hand like dust. He watches. She doesn't like hooves. What? She prefers bare feet, he murmurs, like hers. You want to laugh, but you can't. Not here. You walk on, though your legs are heavier now. Like the ground itself is trying to persuade you to lie down. Just a little rest, just a little closer to the soil. That evening the sky begins to flicker. Not with light, but with color. You blink, and the grass seems greener. Blink again, and it's gray. Shadows stretch in the wrong direction. The dogs start growling, not barking low and sustained like they've caught a scent they don't want to chase. You feel something on your neck, a breath. You spin around. No one. And yet for a brief instant you see footprints behind you in the dust. Bare, small, pointing toward you. You reach for your bag. The bell is missing. You don't panic, not right away. Your mind does the rational thing. First checks your bag again, even though you know exactly where the bell was tucked, sealed in an inner pocket behind the compass and the emergency chocolate. You search harder paw through your supplies like you're solving a problem of organization, not intrusion. But it's gone. And the flap of your bag is still buckled. Andras watches you from a few paces away, chewing calmly on the end of a sprig of fennel. His dogs sit at his feet, still growling, low teeth just barely visible between parted lips. She took it, you say finally. He nods once. She usually does eventually. But I didn't give it to her. He spits out the fennel stalk. Doesn't mean it wasn't hers. The moon is climbing again. No longer a polite arc on the horizon. It rises fast now, confidently, like a stage light, illuminating only what it chooses. Its brightness casts everything into stark contrast. Sheep grass, your boots, your hands, except Andras. You realize he doesn't cast a shadow anymore. You stare. He sees your face and sighs. I know, it happens. I'll get it back. You stammer your shadow. He raises a hand. It's not gone. Just delayed. Happens when you cross one of her lines without noticing. He steps forward and the grass bends away from him against the wind. And if it doesn't come back, you ask. He shrugs. Then someone else picks up my habits. You sit heavily on a flat rock as the last light fades. The sheep begin to lie down, not in groups, but in precise intervals, evenly spaced like chess pieces on some vast and ancient board. Their eyes reflect the moonlight as if they were made of polished bone. Tonight, Andras does something different. Instead of keeping watch, he begins to hum. Not a song, not even a tune. Just a vibration from deep in his chest, barely audible. At first, you think he's doing it to stay awake. Then you realize it's for them. The sheep, the dogs, you. And something else. There's a low thrum in the air now, like a far-off engine buried beneath the soil. The kind of sound that isn't heard so much as felt in your molars. It pulses with a rhythm that doesn't match your heartbeat but tries to overwrite it. And then the sheep start to move. Not walking, not pacing, shifting. One by one they rise and begin turning their heads toward the same point on the horizon. The west. You follow their gaze. There's nothing there, but then again maybe there is. You squint and it's like your vision stutters, like trying to stream something on bad Wi-Fi. Shapes flicker into focus, but not all at once. First a curved line, then a silhouette, then a cloak, maybe. No. A shawl. And feet. Bare feet. She's there again. The same girl from the salt lick. But this time she's older, or younger, or multiplied. You can't tell. Her figure seems to phase strobe-like between sizes and ages and shadows. Sometimes tall, sometimes child-sized, always barefoot, always facing you. She begins to walk, but her feet don't touch the ground. They suggest motion, but her shape glides smoothly like a figure on glass. You stand. The dogs whimper. Andras tightens his grip on his staff. She doesn't always come this close, he mutters. But when she does, what you whisper? He lowers his voice. Someone's about to forget something important. The moon pulses, just once. A deep white flare, and your ears pop. The girl stops 10 feet away. Then she opens her mouth. But no sound comes out. Only silence. Not just the absence of noise, this is something stronger. A presence of quiet. A thick, heavy hush that presses against your ribcage and makes your knees buckle slightly. The air grows colder. You want to run, but your feet won't obey. You try to look away, but your eyes don't respond. And then movement. She raises her hand. Not toward you, toward the clapperless bell, which is no longer on the rock. It's floating, slowly rising as if carried by threads of moonlight. And then it rings, just once. Sharp, clear, soft. Like the last note of a lullaby sung in a language no mother teaches her child anymore. And everything around you stops. The sheep freeze. The dogs go silent. And even Andras, who's seen this before, drops to one knee. Your ears are ringing, but your mind is blank. For a single moment, you forget why you're here. What day it is. Your own name. And just as quickly it returns. The girl is gone. The bell is gone. But on the rock where it had sat is a feather. Jet black, slightly curled, and wet. You reach for it. Andras grabs your wrist. No, he says. She left it for, not for us. For who? He looks at the nearest sheep, and doesn't blink. You lie awake until dawn staring at that feather. It never dries. No dew, no mist, no rain. Yet the moment light touches it, the thing begins to glisten again, wet, but not with water. More like oil. Or something older, the way amber sweats in summer. You don't pick it up. You don't dare. Andras made it very clear the feather is not for you. It's for the sheep. But which one? When the sun finally hauls itself over the flat horizon, weak, sluggish like it too has been avoiding this place, you notice something odd. The sheep are all facing the same direction. Still. Silent. Eyes on the east, unmoving. Not even chewing. And then one steps forward. Not the oldest, not the strongest. A speckled ewe with a torn left ear. You hadn't noticed her much before. Now she moves directly to the feather, nudges it with her nose, and then lies down beside it. She's chosen, Andras says. You mean they've chosen her, you reply. He nods, but doesn't say which they he means. That's becoming a pattern. You watch the ewe for a while. She doesn't eat, doesn't blink. Just breathes in slow, heavy rhythms, as if sinking with something beneath the ground. You break the silence. Why sheep? Andras doesn't answer right away. He takes a long breath, picks up a curved piece of bone, and begins scraping it into the dirt, etching a spiral with the tip. Sheep remember where they should be, he says at last, not where they are. That's important when the moon forgets the rules. You ask what happens to them, those the moon touches. They get quiet first, then confused. Then they just stop moving forward. Like that one last night, you say. He doesn't look up. That one's already gone. What's left is a shape for us to look at so we don't notice the missing. You turn to the speckled ewe again. She's still lying next to the feather, except there's no shadow beneath her anymore. The sun is fully up. The other sheep cast clear, sharp silhouettes in the dry grass, but her spot is just brightness and silence. She's already fading, Andras murmurs. You can't stop it. But we're not even under the moonlight anymore, you protest. He brushes dust from his coat. Once the bell rings, the light doesn't matter. According to mainstream accounts, livestock freezing incidents during full moons have been documented by farmers in Hungary, Romania, and parts of Austria for over a century. Though commonly dismissed as temporary paralysis due to parasites or seasonal shock, some field reports describe entire herds halting simultaneously only during lunar perigees. Modern science offers explanations: barometric changes, air ionization, circadian disruption, but none explain the absence of shadow. Fringe researchers claim that shadow loss is a recurring motif in Hungarian rural folklore, especially connected to shepherd myths. One 19th century scholar described it as a form of soul drift, not death, but a quiet migration into something else. Something still present, but no longer quite here. You sit beside Andras as he finishes carving the spiral. It's a map, he says quietly, not of places, of moments. What does it lead to? He stands. Not everything leads. You follow the flock again, though the speckled ewe does not rise. She stays behind, eyes open, body still. Birds ignore her. Even the flies don't land. You look back once. The feather is gone. That afternoon you pass an old well dried, choked with roots and leaves. Around its rim are more of those odd symbols scratched into stone. You ask if he's seen this one before. Andras nods. This is where they bring the lambs born under the wrong moon. What happens to them? He shrugs. Some come out better, some don't come out at all. You shiver. There's a breeze now, one that doesn't follow the normal direction of the wind. It curls from the well like an exhale wrapping around your legs, climbing your spine. And then above, just for a blink, you see something move across the sun. Not a bird, not a cloud, a shape. Pale, long-limbed, floating. Gone before you can track it. What was that, you ask? Andras is silent. For once, even he looks unnerved. Sometimes she leaves early, he mutters. Leaves what? He glances at the sheep, and then at you. You don't ask again. The flock slows that evening. Not tired resistant. Like the ground ahead is heavier. You crest a low ridge and see what lies beyond. A dry riverbed, curving wide, empty. And yet every sheep stops. Not out of fear, out of recognition. They've been here before. This is where she walked last, Andras says, before the wolves turned back. You ask, why would wolves turn away from a river? He looks up at the moon rising once more, steady and full. Because even they know where their world ends. And just then, as the last light fades from the grass, the speckled ewe lets out a long, low breath from miles behind you, even though she never moved. Even though she shouldn't still exist. Even though you buried her 3 hours ago. The sound of that breath travels farther than it should. Not loud, not forceful, but sharp, cutting through the air like a cold nail across glass. The sheep react instantly. Every head lifts, every eye widens, not in panic, but in profound, synchronized awareness. The entire flock turns as one facing the direction behind you, back toward the ridge, back toward the place where the speckled ewe lay in the grass beside the feather that never dried. But she shouldn't be breathing. You buried her. You're sure of it. Andras, too, has frozen. His mouth parts slightly. His staff trembles in his grip. You whisper, that was her, wasn't it? He nods once. No hoof sounds, just breath. That means she's walking now. A long pause. Walking where? Andras finally exhales. Back in. The sheep refuse to continue. They press together at the lip of the dried riverbed, bleating in low, anxious tones. The dogs pace along the rear, uncharacteristically alert, now snapping at the grass as though they see something crawling through it. You can't. You and Andras set up camp early that evening, tucked into a shallow hollow of dry reeds. There's no fire again by now. You've stopped asking why. The moon is back larger than ever, no longer silver, but with a yellowish hue like old parchment soaked in candle wax. It looks wrong, textured almost, like something was written on it and then erased. As the sheep settle uneasily for the night, Andras pulls something from his coat. A bone. Not fossilized, not decorative, fresh, maybe from a goat or a lamb. On it, a sequence of marks etched deep, irregular, spirals, crescents, and 3 slashes side by side. He hands it to you. This is a story. You ask, what kind of story? The kind you don't read. The kind you recognize when it happens again. He points to the 3 slashes. That's what we're in now. The 3rd visit. From her. He nods. First time she comes to watch. Second time to choose. 3rd time, she asks. You stare at the bone. One end is burnt. The other end is slick, as if someone had once tried to suck the marrow out, but stopped halfway. Mainstream historians have documented bone-carving traditions among Hungarian shepherds, though usually involving cattle tallies or dates of pasture migration. However, several fringe ethnographers from the early 20th century reported bone inscriptions that defy numerical systems, suggesting calendars based not on solar movement, but mood. as in emotional states mapped to moon phases, predicting not weather, but safety. In these systems, a third visit often coincided with stillbirths, failed migrations, or most troubling instances of a flock collectively walking off cliffs with no visible cause. You grip the bone tightly, and then from far off, a bell rings. Clear, loud, with a clapper, but not the one Andras carries. You feel it in your teeth again. Andras mutters, "That's not hers." "Whose is it then?" "The stork's." You blink. "What?" He looks grim. Some bells don't belong to people. You laugh reflexively. A stork has a bell. He doesn't. He just points skyward. And that's when you see it. A solitary stork circling under the moon. Wings wide, gliding soundlessly in a perfect spiral. Except it's refusing to land, just circling endlessly. "That's how we knew it was beginning again," Andras says softly. "That bird hasn't touched ground in 3 nights. Not even to eat. Maybe it's just migrating late," you offer. He gives you a look. You think this is about weather, and suddenly you realize what's missing. There are no other animals. No crickets, no owls, no mice rustling through grass. Just sheep. Just dogs. Just one stork that won't descend, and a moon that stayed full too long. A breeze cuts across your shoulders and carries with it something light flecks of gray dust, soft as flour. You catch one in your hand. It's ash. You ask Andras if there's a fire nearby. He says not anymore. The sheep begin to stir again, not moving, but rearranging, forming an oval this time. Not a spiral, not a ring. An oval pointing toward the west. You feel like you're looking at a compass, but for something intangible. And then just at the edge of hearing, a hum. Low, mechanical, almost like wires under tension. Andras says she's almost finished crossing. "The riverbed," you ask. He gives you the bone back. "No," he says, into us. You sleep uneasily, or maybe not at all. But when morning finally comes, the sheep are all facing east again, just like yesterday. Eyes wide. Except one. A black ram, stiff and still. Dead. You approach, and he blinks. Once, but casts no shadow. You kneel beside the black ram. Its eyes are wide and glassy, but not dead. The breath still moves in and out of its nostrils, steady, slow, fogging the morning air. But its ears don't flick. It doesn't respond when you speak. When you wave your hand in front of its face, it doesn't blink, doesn't flinch. Andras joins you silently. He crouches, grips the ram's horn, and gently tilts its head. The creature goes with the motion, limp but upright. It doesn't resist, doesn't obey, it just accepts. He's still here, Andras says. But he traces a finger through the dust. But someone else might be using the front door. You don't understand. You don't want to understand. But the shadowlessness is impossible to ignore. This makes two now: first the speckled you, now this black ram. No projection from the body, no outline in the light. Just absence like the sun forgot them on purpose. And worse still, he's standing in a ring of flattened grass, perfectly oval, as if he'd been placed there. You ask if it's the same as what happened to the you. No, says Andras, she was taken. He's being worn. You recoil, worn. Like a coat, he mutters. Some things can't shape themselves, they need a pattern. You watch the ram. His legs don't tremble. He doesn't shift weight. But he does open his mouth. And bleats. Just once. But it's not the sound you expect. It's hollow, echoed, like it's being played through a pipe buried underground. And then you hear it again. A second bleat. But not from the ram. From the horizon. You look up and see a shape there, vague at first, then sharper. Another black ram. Identical. Head low. Ears forward. Bleeding in perfect mimicry of the first. What am I looking at, you ask? Andras spits in the dirt. A mirror. Mainstream herding accounts do mention a curious phenomenon among Hungarian flocks known as duplazodas, or doubling. In rare cases, a sheep appears in two places at once, usually during full moons, and almost always involving an animal close to death. The second version never lasts long, often vanishing the moment it's touched. Fringe scholars argue it's not duplication, but inversion, a copy made from memory, not matter. A version remembered by the land, not the body. The second ram stands there unmoving and then begins to walk. Not toward you, away, directly west, toward the dry riverbed. The original ram remains in place still as a statue. Andras recess. We follow. You hesitate. Follow what, the sheep or the echo? He shrugs, whichever answers first. You walk behind the silhouette for over an hour. It never looks back, never wavers. The dogs follow nervously, staying closer to you than usual. One of them whines and licks its own paw until the fur begins to come away. The closer you get to the riverbed, the more the air changes. The breeze dies, the sunlight dulls, and the insects, what few remain, go silent. You crest the final ridge and look down. The second ram is standing at the center of the riverbed. No tracks behind it, just grass, unbroken, untouched, as if it floated there. And then, as if sensing your arrival, it lies down and melts. Not blood, not bones, just dark mist curling like ink into the dust. And it's gone. You turn to Andras. He's not watching the spot where the ram disappeared. He's watching you. You remember the old joke he asked suddenly. You blink. What joke? The one about the two shepherds. One says, "What if we're not watching the sheep?" The other says, "Then who's watching us?" You force a smile. That's not very funny right now. He nods. It wasn't supposed to be. You return to the flock just before sundown. The original ram hasn't moved. And now you notice something even more disturbing. The sheep around him are beginning to match his posture, standing too still, casting no shadows. One by one. You count 3, then 5, 7. All black-faced sheep, each of them quiet, each of them staring directly at the rising moon. That night, you and Andras don't speak. You sleep with one hand on your bag. The bell's still not there, but the feather is back. And this time, it's in your boot. You pull the feather from your boot with 2 fingers holding it like a loaded needle. It's just as slick as before, wet, curling slightly at the tip, though the air is dry and the night warm. Your boot had been tied tight. There's no way anything could have slipped in by accident, and yet here it is. And the moment it touches the open air, the sheep stir. Not in panic, not even in interest. It's more reverent. They shift slowly, heads lifting in one wave. No bleating, no stamping, just collective acknowledgement. And they all turn to face the moon. Not the sky, not the hills. The moon. It's enormous tonight. More orange than yellow now, like someone boiled down the last sunset and pinned it above the earth. You stare up, and your throat tightens. It feels low, closer than it should be, too near, like a lantern on a string someone is lowering just for you. Beside you, Andras watches the flock. He says nothing. You break the silence. "It was in my boot." He nods. "She wanted you to walk with it." "What happens if I do?" He shrugs. "Depends where you end up." You're still holding the feather. Its damp trail leaves a thin smear on your fingers, not black like ink, but silvery blue, like fish scales. It catches the moonlight in a way that makes you think of eyes. Dozens of them, watching. You ask, "Is this even from a bird?" Andras doesn't answer. He takes the feather from your hand and lays it on the ground tip pointing due west. The sheep instantly shift again. Every one of them reorients to match its direction, and for the first time you feel the pulse. It comes from the earth. Slow, deliberate, lunar. You wouldn't even call it vibration. More like the ground is breathing. Not with air, but with memory. The sheep begin walking, not grazing, walking. Not all at once. Just a few at first, those with black faces, the ones who'd stopped casting shadows. They lead. The rest follow. The dogs don't bark, don't herd. They stay behind. You and Andras fall into step beside the herd. The moon throws long, tall shadows in front of you now, like ghosts pacing ahead of their bodies. But the sheep, the ones leading, have none. They move into the dry riverbed without hesitation, and somehow the wind stops when they cross that invisible line. You follow, and the silence feels thick, like moving through warm wax. You whisper, "Where are they going?" Andras speaks without looking at you. "Back. To where?" He gestures at the stars. Before, a moment later, the air changes. Subtly. A scent drifts by burnt milk, sweet hay, old wool, and under its salt. You're in the middle of the riverbed now. The soil here is packed and cracked, but as you walk across it, you notice the ground seems slightly soft. You press your heel down, it sinks. Only slightly, maybe a centimeter. But then the sheep behind you begin sinking too. Not into water, not into mud. Into light. Pale moon-colored light that seeps from the cracks in the earth like steam. Gentle, colorless, but pulling. The black-faced sheep go first. One by one they descend into the light. No struggle, no fear. They simply vanish slowly and cleanly. The air grows warmer, and stranger still, you hear a sound that doesn't belong. Laughter, children's laughter. Far off, echoing, like a playground at dusk. You look at Andras. He's pale now. Pale in a way that's not natural. Like he's beginning to reflect the moon instead of resist it. You grab his arm. "Is this normal?" He doesn't blink. "She's taking them early this year." "Why?" He swallows. "Because we're forgetting too fast." Mainstream historians acknowledge that many old Hungarian herders believed in a kind of cosmic debt, where the moon borrowed time from the living to light the night. In return, Shepherds offered tokens, carved wood bells, or even wool tied to trees. If the debt went unpaid, it was believed the moon would take something more significant. But this is no token exchange. This is collection. And then you feel it. The feather is in your hand again, but you never picked it up. You spin to ask Andras, but he's gone. Not vanished, not taken, just replaced. In his place stands a tall shape, humanoid, not exactly solid, wearing his coat, holding his staff, but with bare feet. You step backward. Your boots crunch something. You look down. A ring of salt, perfect, unbroken, around you. You're standing in a circle, and inside that circle, you're the only one casting a shadow. You stare down at the salt ring around your boots, not breathing. The grains are fine white and tightly packed. They glint faintly in the moonlight like bone dust, not ordinary table salt. You didn't pour this. Andras didn't. No container, no trail, no footprints leading in. Just a circle, perfect and complete. And somehow you're inside it. You glance up. The figure still stands there, tall, still bare feet, pressing the earth like they belong to it more than you ever could. It wears Andras's coat, but it doesn't move like him. Too still, too quiet. The folds of the coat don't sway with the breeze, they resist it like paper dipped in wax. It tilts its head, not the way people do. Like a question being asked behind the question. Where is he? You ask aloud, your voice thin. The figure raises a hand slowly and points down. You follow the gesture. The salt around your boots begins to darken, not melt, not crumble. It gets wet from underneath. Moisture seeps up from the dry soil, lifting the salt like mist on a mirror. You step back. The ring holds, and you realize you can't cross it. You try. Your foot hesitates at the line as if something presses against your ankle. Not violently, just insistently, like a polite bouncer refusing you entry into your own body. You turn again. The figure is gone. You're alone in the ring. Outside, the sheep continue walking across the riverbed, what's left of them anyway. Most have vanished, dissolved into light. The others trail behind without urgency. No fear, just momentum. The moon pulses once. And in that flash, something shifts. You're no longer standing in a salt ring. You're sitting in a small wooden chair, roughly carved. Your back aches from the tilt of the seat. Your hands are folded in your lap, and in front of you, a table. A low circular one, covered in cloth. Embroidered in patterns you recognize from Andras's bone carvings, spirals, crescents, mirrored slashes. On the table sits a plate, and on the plate a single object, a clapper, just the clapper. No bell. Rusty, heavy, pitted with age. You reach for it without thinking, and a hand slaps yours away. It's Andras, not the figure, the real one. He stands across the table, sweat on his brow, eyes bloodshot. His coat is torn at one sleeve. Mud stains his boots. You almost picked it up, he says. What is it? He leans forward. It's not a clapper, he says. It's a key. To what? To her memory. You glance again. It looks like iron, maybe bronze, but it pulses faintly. Not glowing, just aware. You stand from the chair, and the world shifts again. You're back in the riverbed. The salt ring is gone, the table is gone, the clapper is nowhere to be seen. But Andras is still here, breathing, alive. You exhale. I thought you were... He cuts you off. We don't say things like that here. The remaining sheep gather near your legs. Their bodies press close, not for warmth, but for weight, as though they're anchoring you. And then you feel something pass behind you. Not wind, not presence, just weightless awareness. A smell follows Rosemary. Dry wool, milk turned sour, the scent of something remembered after forgetting for too long. And all at once the sheep kneel. Everyone. Front legs first, then back, as if waiting. Not for sleep, not for slaughter, for audience. Andras falls to one knee too. So do you, because she is here now. You can't see her, but she's close, closer than your breath. You close your eyes and hear it. The faintest sound, like wind moving through a flock, except it isn't wind, and it isn't through. It's inside. A voice, not words but tone, like a bell rung underwater. And then one sheep cries out, not in pain, in recognition. You open your eyes, and it's the black ram, the one that had no shadow. He's casting one now, but it's not his shape. It's yours. Exactly. And it's walking away. You freeze. There it is. Your own shadow, long-limbed and unmistakable, peeling itself off the ground like damp parchment. It walks ahead, away from you, trailing across the riverbed, without resistance, perfectly upright. But the light doesn't shift. The sun doesn't move. You're not casting it anymore. You try to move your legs. They obey but feel slow heavy like someone else is holding the strings. You step forward and your body follows, but your mind lags behind, caught in the space between understanding and denial. That's mine, you say. Andras stands beside you, dust streaked across his face like war paint. It was, he says. Now it's borrowed. By who? He doesn't answer right away. Instead, he reaches down, picks up a handful of dirt, and lets it fall slowly from his palm. That's how she starts, he says. Not with bodies, not with souls, with shapes. You leave enough of yourself behind in the moonlight, and she builds a doorway. To where? To when? You look at the ram. It stands still now, eyes glassy sides rising and falling in slow, unnatural rhythm. Its shadow you has nearly reached the other edge of the riverbed. It turns its head slightly as if listening, and then stops, as though it's waiting for you to follow. You take a hesitant step forward. The ram doesn't move, but the shadow lifts an arm, your arm, and points directly at you. You whisper, "What happens if I follow it?" Andras's voice drops low. You might find out when you were supposed to stay lost. Mainstream Hungarian peasant tales rarely speak of doppelgangers directly. But in shepherd lore, the fear of Elatrolam, or the before me, persists. These aren't copies. They're moments echoes of you from other times, other moon cycles, called forth by error or intention. When someone meets their before self, it's said, the world decides which one to keep. The ground beneath your feet trembles slightly. The wind shifts. You look down. The black ram is gone. So is the rest of the flock. Gone. No bleats, no footprints, just empty riverbed and your shadow now paused at the far edge waiting. And then the moon flickers. Not dims. Flickers. Like a bad light bulb. Once. Twice. And you remember something the old calendar Andras showed you, the one with the spiral that broke at the wrong phase. You turn to him. It's tonight, isn't it? He doesn't ask what you mean. He just says yes. The sheep aren't lost. They've been taken early. The cycle broke. You run forward across the cracked bed, chasing your shadow. Your feet pound the dry soil. Each step feels louder than it should, like thunder in a vacuum. And then halfway across, the light stretches. Not brighter, not darker, just longer, as if every inch of your body has been pulled sideways. You stumble. Your head swims. For a moment, the world tilts, and you're not in the riverbed anymore. You're in a field. Same sheep, same staff in your hand, but your fingers are longer, older. You smell smoke, wood smoke, not ash. There's laughter nearby. A bell tower rings once in the distance. You're standing outside a stone hut. It's dusk. A fire glows within. And inside that hut, you see yourself. Not older, not younger, just you. Sitting at a table, writing. You blink, and you're back in the riverbed, gasping, staring up at the sky as the moon stares back. Andras is beside you, breathing hard. "I told you," he says, pulling you up by the arm. She opens when you're not watching. You cough. "What was that?" "And almost," he says. "You almost traded places." Your shadow. Gone. Returned. Unclear. You're casting something, but it flickers. At times it's shorter than it should be. Other times it moves before you do. "I don't like this," you murmur. "No one does," Andras says. "But we don't have to like it. We just have to finish it." "Finish what?" He gestures to the hills. She's almost full. You look up. The moon, nearly touching the center of the sky, pulses once more. Not as light, not as energy. As sound? A low chime that you hear in your sternum. And somewhere behind you, the bell without the clapper rings. For the first time. On its own. And you understand she's not done choosing yet. The clapperless bell rings again. Not loud, not metallic, not anything a normal bell should be. It sounds like a memory of a bell. A noise you're supposed to recognize but can't place. Like the final note of a lullaby your grandmother sang, only now you're hearing it backwards. You and Andras freeze. The sound comes from the east. Back where you started, you turn. The moon pulses, and in that moment you see it. The sheep, all of them, standing in a single line along the crest of a far ridge, perfectly still, silhouetted against the sky like the ridged teeth of some ancient jaw. They are not grazing. They are watching. Not you. Not Andras. The moon. Why are they facing east again, you whisper. Andras adjusts his coat, his eyes scanning the ridge. Because they know it's nearly open. What is... He doesn't answer. Instead, he reaches into his satchel and pulls out a scapula. A sheep's shoulder blade, cleaned, polished, inscribed with a spiral and a jagged line cut straight through it. The bone is so thin the moon shines through the edges. This, he says, is where the story gets told. He hands it to you. It's warm, heavy, but not from mass, from meaning. You turn it in your hands and feel something strange. Your pulse is matching its curve. Not metaphorically, physically. Thump, thump, spiral, spiral. Is this a map? Andras shakes his head. No, a script, but not for reading, for remembering. Historically, shepherds across Eastern Europe used scapula bones for divination. They'd burn the edges and read the cracks, predicting weather harvests and births. But in the Hordobagi, there's scattered evidence of scapulomancy practiced without fire bones carved and kept unburnt, meant to preserve, not foretell. Fringe ethnographers believe these bones weren't about seeing the future. They were about keeping the past from escaping. You look up at the ridge again. The sheep haven't moved. You and Andras begin walking toward them, your boots crunching in dry soil as the wind shifts again, this time carrying a smell you haven't encountered before. Lilac, soft, faint, out of place. Do you smell that, you ask? He nods. She's choosing by season now. You blink, she what? Most times she chooses by blood, or shadow, or shape. But when she can't decide, she remembers what the air felt like when it hurt the most. You reach the base of the ridge, the moon climbs higher, and then the sheep start to sing. Not a melody, not a song, just a hum, deep, vibrating. Not with their mouths, with their bodies. You feel it in your feet, in your teeth, in the bone Andras gave you. The black-faced sheep, those that had gone still earlier, begin to sway. Not side to side, inward, as if being drawn into the memory of their own bodies. You reach the top, and you see the object they've gathered around. A bell, full-sized, cast iron, hung from a wooden frame made of splintered trees. You've never seen it before, and you have definitely seen it before. Was this always here, you ask? Andras looks grave. No, but also yes, he adds. That's how it works. You step closer. The bell is wrapped in wool cords, tied tightly crisscrossing its base, as if someone wanted to muffle it, not protect it. There's a tag tied to one of the cords. Old paper, yellowed, scrawled in a handwriting you know. It's yours. Do not ring, do not forget. You feel your throat close, and then you hear something behind you. Hooves, but too many, too close. You turn. The sheep are gone, and in their place, people. They stand in a line, draped in shepherd's coats, but they're not breathing, not blinking, and their feet are hooved. You look to Andras. He's kneeling now, head bowed, arms folded. He whispers, she's crossing. You look to the moon. It pulses, and the bell, wrapped in wool, begins to vibrate, not ringing, wanting. You feel it in your chest again, that tugging, the same pull as the riverbed, the same pull as your shadow walking off without you. You know what this is, the choice, not offered with words, but with memory. You reach for the bell, and the wind stops. Your fingers hover just above the wool-wrapped bell. The air is thick, so still it presses on your ears like the moment before a storm breaks. The cords wrapped around the iron aren't just restraints. They're reminders. Each knot, each loop is layered in meaning, sheep's wool braided by hand, twisted into protection or maybe a seal. You can feel the bell waiting beneath your fingertips. The moon pulses once more. A slow, deliberate throb. The silhouettes behind you, those strange half-human shapes in shepherd's coats with hooved feet, don't move. They just stand silent, forming a crescent around the hill's edge, watching. Not you. The bell. You look down at the tag again. Do not ring, do not forget. Your own handwriting. You know it. The curl of the G. The way you never quite connect the T. It's not from a journal or a scrap of paper you remember using, but it's undeniably yours. You wrote it. Or you will. You whisper, and if I do ring it, Andras, still kneeling, speaks low without looking up. Then she will know where to find the rest of you. The rest, he finally raises his eyes. You've left pieces behind. In every cycle, in every forgetting, this bell draws them back. You almost ask what she wants with your pieces, but you already know. She doesn't want you. She wants your echo. The version of you that walked backward through the sheep lines. The shadow that pointed at your own body. The version that wrote that note and tied it to this bell. And if you ring it, she can assemble you. Mainstream Hungarian spiritual traditions rarely discuss reincarnation in the Western sense, but there's a persistent belief in the fragmented soul, a concept older than the church found in shepherds' lullabies and weather proverbs. The soul, they say, can scatter like seeds in strong wind. Each full moon becomes a rake, gathering pieces not into wholeness, but into remembrance. Fringe scholars note that some herders believed ringing certain bells, especially those wrapped in wool, could call back what had been lost. But not everything that returns is meant to. Your hands are shaking now. You back away from the bell, and as you do, the figures with hooved feet take one step forward. One, in unison. Their heads tilt. Their faces remain obscured, hidden beneath the low shadow of felt hats and weathered cloaks. But their postures are wrong. Loose in the limbs, but stiff in the neck. like people who haven't moved in a long time trying to remember how. You back up another step. They don't follow. Yet. And then the moon flickers. Just once. And you feel yourself vanish. Not completely. Not physically. Just your outline. Your shape in the world. The pressure of your presence. Gone. Your hands still move. You still breathe. But there's no texture to you anymore. No resistance. The grass doesn't bend where you step. The wind doesn't tug at your coat. You're a footprint without a heel. You panic. And then suddenly, the bell rings. Once. Clear! Sharp. But you didn't touch it. You look around. No one did. Andras is still kneeling. The figures haven't moved, but something did. You. A part of you that isn't here anymore. And you know this because you remember the river, not the dried one. The real one. The one that was buried centuries ago, long before the pusta dried out. You remember wading through it as a child, its water up to your waist. You remember the scent of clay and storks overhead. You remember the voice that called you back when you wandered too far. Your voice, calling you from the bank, from the past, from the before you. The echo tightens around your chest like a belt. You turn to Andras. I remember, you say, but I wasn't supposed to. His mouth tightens. No, he agrees. That's how she wins. You look back at the bell. It's silent again. But its shadow now stretches upward. Not across the ground. Up. Into the sky. Into the clouds. Into the underside of the moon where no light should reach. And the figures. Gone. All of them. The only thing left behind is the faintest trail of salt spirals leading away into the fields. And one sheep. A lamb. Newborn. Wet. Shivering in the grass near the bell. But not breathing. Until you step closer. And then it opens its eyes. And they are yours. You fall to your knees. The lamb doesn't move, but its gaze pins you in place. Eyes too large, too familiar. Not just in shape or color, but in intention. They don't look at you, they read you. As if flipping through everything you've forgotten, lingered on, lied about, and left behind. And somehow you know. That's not a lamb. That's your absence made flesh. It blinks once slowly. And then it bleats. But the sound that comes out is your voice. Just one word. Soft, choked. Help. You scramble backward. The grass beneath you doesn't bend. Still no weight. Still no presence. You glance down and see your hands, but faintly. Like looking through thin fog. You're fading. And the lamb is brightening. Andras steps forward, finally face pale eyes locked on the creature. She's building now, he says. You whisper me. He nods. The version of you that stayed too long under too many moons. The one that forgot too much. The one that never left. The lamb struggles to its feet. Shaky, but determined. It stumbles once, then straightens. Ears twitching. Still looking at you. And you feel it, that pull. Like someone's reached into your chest and wrapped their fingers around your oldest memory. You try to speak, but your throat tightens. You try to stand, but your knees won't hold. The lamb begins walking. Toward the bell. And as it walks, it grows. Inches taller, then a foot. Its legs elongate, its spine curves. It begins to unfold in impossible ways. Flesh bending around time. This is no animal. This is you rebuilding. But not the you who's here. The you who stayed the first time. The you who didn't resist the moon. Andras lays a hand on your shoulder. She's offering a trade, he says. A trade for what? He tilts his head. Memory. Presence. Shape. You whisper, I don't want to forget. She doesn't need you to want anything, he replies. She just needs you to be tired. And you are. Not sleepy. Soul tired. The weight of every sheep's bleat. Every echo of your own voice in someone else's mouth. The sound of that bell you never touched ringing anyway. The sky darkens, but not with clouds. The moon is eclipsing itself. You don't even know how that's possible. One edge of the glowing disk curls inward like paper burned from the top. The rest flickers, pixelates, warps. And then she arrives. Not walking, not floating, folding, one ripple at a time. The air bends as she passes. She's wearing wool. Your wool. Her face is not a face, it's a surface. Reflective. Not like a mirror, but like the idea of reflection. When you look at her, you don't see her. You see every moment you ignored a warning sign. Every time you said that's probably nothing. She is your blind spot walking on bare feet. And beside her is the lamb still shifting, still stretching, still becoming. You want to scream, but your voice is gone. You want to run, but your shadow won't let you. It clings to your heels, holding you in place like it remembers something you don't. And then she reaches for the bell, touches the wool cords, and they untie themselves. No motion, no pulling. They decide to fall away. The bell is bare now, naked, vulnerable. She lifts the clapper, the one you swore not to ring, the one you wrote to yourself about, and she places it gently inside and looks at you. The bell rings. Not loud, just once. But in that sound you hear everything you've forgotten. Your first lie, the name of the sheep that died in your care when you were young. The date you should have left, the word you spoke in your sleep that night beneath the willow. The sound of your mother's voice calling you from the porch in a dialect no one speaks anymore. The lamb begins to dissolve, not fall apart, dissolve, like steam rising from memory. And as it vanishes, you feel whole. Not good, not bad, just aligned. Your shape returns. Your hands regain weight. Your boots press into the grass again. You exist, and the bell? Silenced. She turns and walks into the moonlight, which folds behind her like curtains. Gone. And the only thing left in the clearing is the bell, and a single line scratched into the dirt beside it. Next time, leave earlier. You stare at the message etched into the dirt. Next time, leave earlier. Simple, final, but also wrong because you don't remember arriving. Not exactly. You remember the sheep. You remember Andras. But if someone asked where the road into the Hordabagi began, what day you left the last village, what hour you first saw the moon, your answer would be silence. You were always here. You were meant to be here. The bell sits beside the words now. Still. Quiet. Harmless looking, like an artifact misfiled in a museum storage room. No cord, no sound, no clapper. Gone again. Andras kneels beside the mark in the soil. He doesn't speak. He doesn't touch it. He simply nods. So that's it, you whisper. She's gone. He shrugs. She never stays long, but she always returns with more names. The wind returns at last, soft, dry, normal. It passes through your coat and doesn't carry lilac or salt. Just wind. Ordinary. Forgettable. The figures with hooved feet are nowhere to be seen. The black-faced sheep. Gone. Only 7 remain. 7 white-faced sheep that look dazed. As though they were roused from a dream they can't explain. Andras Rees brushing dirt from his coat. We'll have to walk again tomorrow, he says. Can't stay near a bell that's rung. You nod, but your gaze stays locked on the soil. Next time, leave earlier. Your handwriting again. Still yours. But this time it's different. You didn't write it. Not with hands. With presence. A part of you from before or after. The version that tried to warn you once. And now maybe succeeded. You look down at your boots, real solid. Your shadow lies at your feet now, properly aligned, stretching away from the sun like a loyal dog. Andras hands you a strip of wool. For tying your sleeve, he says, even though it's not torn. You nod and tuck it into your belt. The two of you walk back toward the flock. They've already begun moving, instinctively regrouping. The rhythm of their steps is soothing, predictable, ordinary. The first bit of normalcy you've tasted in how long? You're not sure. There are gaps in your memory. Not gaping holes, just soft smudges. You remember the feather, but not when you found it. You remember the bell, but not why it matters. You remember your voice being spoken by something else, but not how it ended. Historians debate whether these rural shepherd legends emerged as coping mechanisms, narratives shaped by isolation, sleep deprivation, and the endless monotony of the plains. But folklore has teeth, and teeth don't evolve unless something's been biting. Fringe researchers sometimes speak of the moon's library as speculative folklore concept, not a real place. The idea is that under every full moon stories are written, not by hand or voice, but by repetition. Walk the same trail too many times. Whisper the same name. Feed the same flock. Eventually you create something. You wrote yourself into this story long before you knew it. And now you've left something behind again. A shape, a version, a memory with your eyes, your silence, your forgotten warnings. And if she finds it, she'll ring the bell again. That night the fire is allowed, small, contained, and the moon finally sets. You and Andras sit beneath a star-soaked sky. The sheep sleep close, breathing softly, no strange formations, no shadows moving against physics, just peace. You sip water from a gourd. It tastes like water. No mint, no ash, just cool earth and sky. Why do you stay out here, you ask? Andras stretches his legs, watching the sparks drift. Because someone has to remember how not to forget. You nod slowly. You lie back and stare at the stars until your eyes grow heavy. And in that liminal moment just before sleep, you hear a voice? Yours, from far off, repeating one sentence, over and over. Leave the bell, leave the bell, leave the bell. You dream of a house with no doors, and a shepherd standing in the window, waving at you, but he has no shadow. You wake before the sun rises. The air is damp, the kind of early morning chill that curls into your clothes and stays there. The sheep are already stirring slow, sleepy movements, ears, flicking noses twitching as they begin to shift like clouds made of breath and wool. Andras is gone. You sit up too fast. Your bag is where you left it. The fire is out, reduced to a thin memory of heat in the stones. No prints in the dirt, but yours. You rise and check the perimeter. Nothing. No András. No staff. No coat draped on a branch, no footprints leading away. Just absence. You whisper his name. Nothing answers. Then you hear it far off. Not a voice. A hum. Low, rhythmic, like sheep breathing in time with the earth. You follow it. Across the hill, over a shallow ridge, until the hum becomes more than sound. It becomes memory. And that's when you see it. A single sheep, white-faced, standing on a stone outcrop. Beside it, András's staff. You climb slowly, heart thudding. The sheep looks at you, calm, familiar. Too familiar. It blinks. And you remember? That was the first sheep you touched on your first night here. The one that leaned into you. The one you counted twice. You approach the staff. It's heavier than it looks. And when you lift it, something shifts in your head like a curtain moving inside your memory. You remember things. The first moon. The riverbed that wasn't dry. The salt circle you made. The bell you buried with both hands, weeping. Not this time. A long time ago. Or maybe ahead. And then you understand something terrible and inevitable. András was always you. Not in metaphor. In sequence. The voice that warned you, the rituals you've mimicked, the handwriting on the tag you've been walking in your own footsteps the entire time. You kneel, and the sheep watches as you plant the staff firmly into the earth. Then it turns and walks away. You don't follow. Instead, you begin walking back toward camp, toward the flock, the fire, your coat, your current self. You're holding your own future now, and you know what comes next, because it's already happened. The bell, the lamb, the moon. It will all return, and you will be waiting. You reach the clearing and see yourself still sleeping, peacefully, one arm across your eyes, a smear of ash across your wrist from the old fire. You stand just outside the circle of camp, and you watch. You could speak, wake yourself, shatter the loop, but that's not how this works. Instead, you whisper softly, "Leave earlier next time." Then you walk away, toward the ridge, toward the place where the moon will rise again, where she waits with open arms and borrowed feet. You do not cast a shadow, because he needs it now. The cycle has closed, and in the distance behind your shoulder, a bell rings. Not once, but twice. The bell's second ring moves through the air like a ripple through still water, slow, undeniable, far too wide for the tiny camp you left behind. You feel it in your spine like someone drawing a line along each vertebra with cold chalk. The sheep feel it too. You don't see them, but you know. Their breath changes, their bodies still. Back in the clearing, your sleeping self stirs. You don't turn to look. You can't. That part of the loop is done now. Instead, you follow the old herding trail west, one foot in front of the other, boots heavy with memory. The landscape doesn't fight you. No wrong wind. No salt in the air. Not yet. This is the in-between. The breath held between exhale and inhale. The moon won't rise for hours, but you already feel its pull. There's a shape forming in your pocket. You don't have to check. You already know. It's the feather again, this time dry. Light as dust. You pull it out. It crumbles in your hand. Gone. No oil, no shimmer. Just memory falling apart in your palm. You're not sure if that's a victory or a warning. The trail leads you to a low hill where the soil is darker than the rest, richer, hungrier, a place where grass grows too tall too fast. You stand at its base, staff in hand, staring upward like it's the final exam of a class you forgot you signed up for. At the top of the hill, a stone bench. Just one. A single sheep waits beside it. You sit. The staff leans against your shoulder like an old friend, and the sheep presses its side gently against your knee. It doesn't look at you, doesn't move, just waits with you. And the sun finally sets. The light fades slowly, lovingly, the kind of dusk you'd write letters in, the kind of dusk you'd say goodbye in. Above, stars begin to pierce through the sky. You wait and wait, until at last the moon returns, perfectly full. Clean this time. No flicker, no false shadow, no second self. Just the moon and silence. She doesn't come tonight. She doesn't need to, because this time you didn't forget, and neither did the sheep. That's enough for now. You reach into your coat and pull out the bone, the scapula, the one with the spiral and the crack down its center. You lay it on the stone bench beside you. No ceremony, no speech, just return, because this too is part of the rhythm. Someone will find it. Maybe another version of you. Maybe someone else. Maybe someone who'll leave a little earlier. The sheep shifts its weight, and suddenly the wind carries a single sound. The first note of a lullaby, not the full song. Just the opening hum, like a mother drawing breath, like the past deciding to forgive itself. And in the darkness as the moon brightens above, you feel yourself fading. Not into fear, not into forgetting, but into peace. For once you are not borrowed. You are not chased. You are not incomplete. You are remembered. And as the sheep lies beside you and the stars crowd the sky, you finally sleep. You wake to bird song. Actual birds this time, not whined, mimicking whistles, not bells pretending to echo. Just starlings, maybe, or blackbirds. They chatter like they've never known fear, and it feels so out of place that you open your eyes expecting something to be wrong. But everything's still. The sun has risen sharp and clean. No clouds. The plains roll out in every direction, golden, empty, and gentle. No signs of the moon. No shadows with wrong intentions. Just warmth. Just light. You sit up slowly. The staff is still beside you, but the sheep gone again. No panic in your chest. No urgency. Just a strange sort of knowing. They're not lost. They've simply walked ahead, and somehow you're no longer afraid of catching up. You stand. Your boots leave marks in the dirt this time. Deep ones, solid. You're whole again. Not completely, but enough to carry yourself. You begin to walk, and before long you spot something curious. A patch of grass flattened, in a perfect circle, and in the middle, a stork, standing, one leg lifted, its wings partially spread but still. You freeze. Because the last time you saw one, it refused to land. This one has, and as you take a cautious step closer, it tilts its head toward you. No fear, no retreat. Instead, it lowers its foot, and begins to walk toward you. Not fly, walk. Its claws make no sound. It circles you once, then stops, and drops something at your feet. You bend down, a single hoof, clean, polished, not bloodied, wrapped in a faded red ribbon. You look back up, but the stork is already gone. No wing beats, no sound, just vanished. The ribbon flutters once, and you feel it an old memory trying to claw its way to the surface. You untie the ribbon and find something tucked beneath it. A photograph, black and white, of yourself, holding a lamb, standing at the riverbed when it still had water. You turn the photo over, on the back written in a shaky hand. If found, return before the third moon. You glance up at the sky. The sun is still bright, but to the west, a pale curve already hangs low. Too early. You feel it again. The pull. The cycle hasn't closed. Not yet. Not completely. And somewhere deep in the roots of the grass beneath your boots, the bell is waiting to ring a third time. You fold the photograph carefully and tuck it inside your coat pocket where it rests against your chest like a second heartbeat. Old, familiar, a little too steady. The hoof, still warm in your hand, fits your palm a little too well. It isn't just a piece of some vanished sheep. It feels gifted, like a token, like a key. You stare at the horizon where the faint crescent moon hangs too early in the sky, and you begin walking. The trail leads you through shallow marsh grass, brittle underfoot. This part of the puszta has changed. It's quieter, heavier. The light takes longer to move. You watch your own shadow closely now, just to be sure it still follows. It does, but sometimes it twitches like it hears something you don't. Midday comes and goes with no sun overhead, just gray sky and strange warmth. Eventually you reach a small rise, and just beyond it another flock. At first you assume they're sheep, but they don't move, don't graze, don't blink. You step closer, heart thudding. They're not sheep, they're statues, full-bodied, life-size, each carved from saltstone, each one frozen mid-motion, heads turned, legs lifted, ears angled as if startled by something behind them. You walk among them slowly, 40, 50 of them. Every detail preserved: the spiral of wool on the flanks, the curve of each horn, even the imprint of hooves into the cracked ground below them. And in the center of the field, a single shepherd, also carved in salt, kneeling, hat tilted low, staff across his knees. You crouch beside him. His face is yours, not just similar, identical. Even the scar near your eye, even the broken tooth. You touch the statue's cheek, and for a moment your finger comes away wet. You step back. The air thickens. Then the salt shepherd opens his eyes, only for a second, then closes them again, and cracks begin forming down his shoulders. You run. You don't stop until the sky shifts again and the air turns dry. Behind you, you hear the soft crumble of statues falling apart. Not shattering, melting, returning to the soil like regret. This was a graveyard, not of sheep, of versions of you. Those who came before or never left. Each time you wandered too close to the center. Each time you refused the choice. Each time the moon asked twice and you waited for the third ring. You keep walking. Eventually you reach a low wall of ancient stones half swallowed by moss. There are figureweights. Not Andras, but a child. He sits cross-legged, barefoot, in a tattered wool cloak far too big for him. He holds a bell in his lap, wrapped in both arms, eyes closed, sleeping. You approach. His skin is pale. His lips move silently. And when you lean in, he whispers your name. Not the name others call you. The name you forgot you once had. The name you gave away under the first full moon. You stagger back. The child opens his eyes. They are black. Not empty. Reflective. You see yourself in them. Then he smiles and hands you the bell. No ribbon. No clapper. Just silence. Just wait. And a note scratched into the iron itself. Ring once if you're ready. Twice if you regret. Thrice if you remember. He vanishes. The bell is cold in your hands and heavy in a way that's not physical. You don't ring it. Not yet. But your fingers already know what they'll do. And above you, the moon waits. You walk for hours with the bell pressed against your chest. You don't put it in your bag. You don't wrap it. You hold it. Because part of you suspects that if you stop feeling its weight, you'll forget it exists. And if that happens, the moon will ring it for you. The inscription hums in your mind. Ring once if you're ready. Twice if you regret. Thrice if you remember. And you're beginning to remember more than you want to. You remember the salt circles. You remember the lamb with your eyes. You remember walking out of your own shadow. But most of all, you remember the house. The one with no door, no windows. Just a bell nailed to the roof. That was the first time. You're sure of it now. You see it in flashes, your younger hands calloused but confident. The sheep were following you that day. You'd just started herding on your own. And when you found the house, you were so sure it was a shelter. Until it rang, without you touching it, 3 times. And then you weren't alone anymore. The path begins to change underfoot. No more plains, no more grass, just clay, soft sun-baked. And rising from it poles, wooden weathered marked with scratches, each topped with a piece of something lost. A broken boot heel, a child's tooth, a piece of mirror, a cracked sheep's bell clapper still attached. You realize as you pass more of them. They're memory stakes. You're in the moon's garden now. It's not a myth. It's not a metaphor. It's a place. And it grows things. Not crops, not flowers. Versions. Shadows. Old footsteps. Every you that paused too long beneath the wrong moonlight is here planted like seeds, waiting to bloom again when someone walks close enough. You clutch the bell tighter. One step too far and you'll join them. Not as a warning, as a pattern. The stakes thin out, and in the center of the field, there is a figure. András, or someone wearing him again. But this time it's not right. The coat doesn't fall properly. The boots float a few inches above the ground. And the staff? It's yours. You watch as the figure slowly begins to dig, not with hands. With the bell! He drives it into the earth like a plow. And as he moves, the soil splits. Light spills out. That white, silvery wrong light that smells faintly of rosemary and wet ash. You step forward. The figure freezes. You call his name. Nothing. You call yours. He turns. It's not András. It's not you. It's something in between. A placeholder. A scarecrow built from memory and wool and too many forgotten regrets. It raises the bell high. You hear a tone building in your skull, a hum without sound, a frequency too low to hear but strong enough to shake your thoughts. And before you can run, it rings. Once. And your ears bleed. Not physically, historically. You forget your first kiss. You forget your mother's lullaby. You forget the sheep's name you lost when you were 11. The figure raises the bell again. Twice. You drop to your knees. The stakes around you begin to shake, hum, rise. Figures grow from them. Not fully formed. Not yet, but becoming. And just before the bell rings a 3rd time, you raise your hand and ring your own bell. Thrice. Everything stops. The garden goes silent. The figure collapses. The light folds into the dirt like fabric. And the stakes pull back into the earth. You breathe. You bleed. And your shadow curls at your feet like a dog that's finally come home. You lie there in the aftermath, face pressed against warm clay, chest heaving like you've just run from the beginning of the world. Your bell, the one you rang, rests beside your fingers, cracked now. A thin line splits the iron from mouth to crown. It doesn't hum anymore. It's quiet. Spent. You're not sure if it broke because of what you did, or because it wasn't supposed to be rung 3 times by the same hand. You sit up slowly. The field is empty. No more stakes, no more false András, no more light. But something lingers. A presence. Not a sound or a shape, just the faint suggestion of someone still watching from behind your shoulder. You don't turn. You've learned better. Instead, you listen. And in that stillness, you hear something strange. Weeping. Soft. Guttural, like someone remembering something too late. You follow the sound down a shallow incline where the clay gives way to moss-covered stone. At the base, you find a well. Not dry. Not dead. It hums faintly, vibrating with warmth. You peer over the edge, and you see them. Faces. Dozens of them just beneath the surface, drifting suspended in silver water, eyes closed, mouths open in silent grief. They're all versions of you. Younger, older, smiling, screaming. Each one caught mid-expression as though frozen in the moment they were last real. One opens its eyes and speaks. No voice, just bubbles. You can't make out the words, but the meaning reaches you anyway. You're almost the last. You step back from the well. It doesn't call you, but it remembers you. And that might be worse. You climb out of the hollow back into sunlight. The bell in your hand crumbles as you stand disintegrating into dust that smells faintly of burned milk and rosemary. You let it fall. You don't need it anymore, because the ringing has stopped. All of it. You walk east now, back toward the open plain. The sheep are waiting. Not many, just a few dozen. Enough to be called a flock. They gather near the old salt stones, stamping their hooves softly, nudging each other with sleepy indifference. They look at you without judgment, as though they've been here before. And perhaps they have. You step among them. They part for you. One brushes against your thigh and you flinch, expecting cold or silence. But it's warm, real. She snorts softly and flicks her ear. You reach up and find your shadow resting properly at your feet again, long and clear in the afternoon sun. And then Andras returns. No ceremony, no announcement. He's just there standing on the rise above the field. You don't wave. You don't call. You just nod. And he nods back. That's all the explanation you'll get. And all you need. You walk together through the dusk shepherd and echo into the last stretch of day. The sheep follow. The wind picks up again, and this time it carries no ash, no lilac, no salt. Just grass and distance. That night you camp beneath the stars once more. There is no fire. There doesn't need to be. Andras gives you something. A bell. New, uncracked. With a clapper made of woven straw. You stare at it. You'll need it again, he says. He shrugs. When the moon remembers you. You hold it tight, but you don't hang it. Not yet. Instead, you tie it to your belt beneath your coat. Let it sleep. Let you sleep. But before you drift off, you look to the sky. The moon hasn't risen. But it will. And you'll be ready. Or at the very least, you'll remember. You wake just before dawn, not because of a noise, but because of stillness. A complete soundless pressure. The kind of silence that presses against your chest like wool soaked in river water. The sheep are asleep. Andras is gone again. But this time you're not afraid. You sit up and find the new bell beside you, not cracked, not humming, just present. Its straw clapper sways slightly in the breeze like it's breathing. You touch it gently. It's warm. A note is tucked beneath it, folded from birch bark tied with a red thread. You open it carefully. One line. Don't let her name you. You stare at the words. Simple, terrifying. Because names, true names, aren't just identity in shepherd folklore. They're ownership. In old Pusta tales, when the moon woman found someone with a name she liked, she took it. Not the body. Not even the soul. Just the knowing of who that person had been. From then on, they were hollow. Alive but untethered. Forgotten by others. Even forgotten by themselves. You glance toward the eastern sky. No moon. But the sheep are starting to wake one by one. And one of them, small, white-faced, timid, bleats softly and steps toward you. Around its neck a bell. Your old one. The clapperless bell. The one you left behind. Your breath catches. The lamb leans forward. You don't flinch this time. You let it sniff your hand. Its eyes meet yours, and for just a moment you see something behind them. A flicker of recognition. Not your reflection. Someone else's. And then it blinks. And lowers its head. And walks away. The bell doesn't ring. But in your chest you feel a note. Like a thread pulled gently through fabric. Like someone drawing a sound in silence. You stand. Pack your things. And take the trail west again? This time you don't ask where it leads. You already know. You come to an old waypost, a simple wooden stake with a ring of bones tied to its top. It's not ominous. It's directional. A sign for those who know the code. One long bone, one hoof, one lock of wool. It means you are being followed, but not by danger. You breathe easier. Until you see the second post. This one has a ribbon. Red. Tied in 3 knots. You pause, because that means you are not alone, and it doesn't know you're watching. You unsling your bell. Hold it in your hand. It doesn't shake, but the ground beneath you seems to lift just slightly, like the air grew stronger in a single gust. You turn slowly. And behind you, maybe 50 paces off, a shape. Not walking, not running, just pausing, like it had been walking beside you the whole time and only now realized you stopped. You don't run. You don't speak. You just raise the bell. And wait. If it comes closer, you'll ring it. Not once, not twice, but only if you remember what not to do. And slowly the shape begins to retreat, not vanish. Just step back, as though it respects the bell more than you. And then it leaves behind a staff, Tall. Familiar. You pick it up. Your name is carved into it, but not the one you go by. The one you forgot. The one you traded away. You smile. Not because you're safe, but because now you're named again. And she can't take what you've already reclaimed. You carry the staff in your left hand, the bell in your right, and for the first time since you stepped onto these plains, you feel centered, not entirely whole, not invincible, but aligned. Balanced like a weight has been returned to the other side of the scale. The sheep fall into step behind you without prompting. You don't guide them. You lead. As the morning rolls forward, the sky brightens but never fully clears. Wisps of cloud hang low, thick and slow like melted lace. The land begins to rise into shallow ridges. You know this terrain. You've seen it in dreams, or memories, or futures. You crest the tallest rise, and what waits on the other side steals your breath. Another flock. At least 100 sheep, all still grazing quietly in a circle. In the center, a tree. Leafless. Black. Familiar. You've seen it before. Not in this lifetime, maybe, but in her presence. The tree is what remains of the first boundary line where she once crossed before wolves knew to be afraid. It doesn't mark direction. It marks threshold. You descend the hill slowly, watching the sheep. None look up. None react. It's as if they don't know you're there. Or worse, they do, and they're waiting. When you reach the edge of the flock, something changes. A breeze starts moving inward. Not past you. Toward the tree. Your coat flutters backward. Your bell swings forward. And the sheep part. Not for you, for someone else. A shape approaches from the other side of the circle. You can't see the face yet, just the outline. Cloak, bare feet, hair long and dark. You ready the bell, and that's when the tree begins to bleed. Not sap, not water. Light. Moonlight. Pale and thick and slow, it oozes from cracks in the bark and pools at the roots. The sheep don't flee. They bow, one by one, head to the earth, knees folding. The figure steps into the light, and you see her clearly. For the first time, she isn't monstrous. She isn't beautiful. She is you. Or rather, every you that wasn't chosen. Every step you didn't take. Every bell you didn't ring. Every word you forgot to speak at the right time. She smiles. It's not cruel. It's not kind. It's inevitable. I'm not yours, you say. She tilts her head, and then speaks your name. The true one. The one from the staff. The one etched in salt. The one she shouldn't be able to say. The wind goes still. Your heart stops. The bell in your hand grows heavy. She takes another step forward, and speaks it again. Once, your shadow trembles. Twice. Your staff begins to split, tiny cracks spidering up the wood. She raises her hand, and draws a third breath. You raise the bell, and speak her name. Not the one others whisper. Not the one the moon keeps. The name she had before she forgot herself. And the moment it leaves your lips, she screams. The sheep scatter. The tree splits. The air folds. You fall to your knees. The bell in your hand shatters. And she crumbles. Not into dust. Not into light. But into you. Pieces of you. Memories. Scars. Fingernail crescents. The sound of your voice breaking for the first time when no one was listening. You gather them. Not because you want to. Because you must. And as you do, the tree stops bleeding and begins to bloom. Leaves. Dozens of them. Each shaped like a bell. Each silent. Each perfect. You sit beneath the blooming tree. Breath-shallow fingers stained with moonlight. The petals or bells or whatever they are don't ring. They sway gently, catching no wind you can feel, as if listening for a frequency too subtle for the waking world. The air around you has changed. It's warmer now. Not just in temperature, but in tone, like the hush that follows after someone says your name in just the right way. The shattered pieces of the bell you carried now rest in your lap. They don't hum, they don't pulse, but each one holds a different memory, clear and absolute. The lamb you carried across a flooded ditch, the scent of salt in your mother's hair, the exact moment you almost left this life behind but didn't. But you gently tuck the shards into the pouch at your side. This story isn't finished, but you've passed a threshold. You glance up at the tree. A single petal detaches and drifts into your hand. It's heavier than it looks, but smooth like polished horn. On its underside, faint lines curl into a script you've never studied but somehow understand. What you carry cannot be taken, only offered. The bell, the name, the silence. They were never tools. They were permissions. And now that you've reclaimed your name and returned her forgotten one, you're finally able to walk without being followed by your own shadow. You stand. Your flock waits on the hill behind you. They've returned. All of them. Even the ones you feared were lost. They mill about quietly, peaceful, whole. And above them in the noonlight sky, the moon is gone. Not hidden, not eclipsed. Absent. You hadn't even realized it until now. And somehow that makes you smile. because you finally believe she's resting, or at least retreating. You begin the descent, staff in hand. Your steps are firm-paced. You don't rush anymore. Below, Andras waves you over. You approach him slowly. He's older this time. Not by years, by memory. The lines on his face match the ones in your hands now. You nod once. So does he. And then he reaches into his coat and hands you something round and silver nestled in a cloth pouch. You open it. A mirror, old, framed in sheephorn, the surface fogged. You stare into it, and for a breathless moment, you see her again. Not outside, inside, in the curve of your cheek, in the weight of your shoulders. You don't flinch. You don't look away. You close the pouch and hand it back. And Andras smiles, because he knows you didn't give it away. You just chose not to carry it anymore. The sheep begin to move. You follow, and with each step, you begin to notice something else. There's no echo. Your boots no longer double their sound. The air no longer replies. You are singular, at last. You crest one more hill, and in the valley below a small wooden shelter stands. Just a lean-to. Barely a roof. But it's real. Weathered. Honest. And it has a door. You laugh out loud. Not because it's funny. Because it's safe. The first true shelter you've seen. And waiting at its threshold, an old lambskin journal. Wrapped in twine. With one phrase carved on its front cover. Only ring for others. You pick it up. You enter the shelter. And you finally close the door behind you. The door shuts with a sound you haven't heard in what feels like 100 lifetimes finality. Not slamming, not sealing, just the gentle closing of something that doesn't intend to open again until you choose. You run your hand along the inside of the frame. Wood. Rough-hewn, honest, no carvings, no hidden names, no bells, just a door. You lean your back against it for a moment, taking in the room. It's small. One cot, one table, a hearth with cold ash, a single clay bowl on a stool. No ghosts, no tricks, no echoes. You exhale slowly and step farther in. The floor creaks, not ominously, just alive. You unwrap the journal. It's old, but not ancient. A shepherd's book. The kind passed down in wool-stuffed pockets and bartered for during bad winters. Its cover is soft with use, no pages missing. Inside, the writing begins not at the first page, but in the middle. You flip back. The pages before it are blank, waiting. You find the place where the writing starts. It's yours, but not in your current hand. This was written earlier, maybe years, maybe cycles ago. It begins? The moon called me by name once. I let her. You turn the page. She fed me salt and wool and memory, and I stayed full until I forgot what hunger was. Each line is familiar, not just in style and truth. This is your story, written forward, by a version of you who knew you'd return here, who knew you'd need this reminder. You are not just the shepherd. You are the flock and the bell and the night. Your fingers tremble slightly. You flip to the most recent entry, a blank page. You set the journal down on the table and sit before it. You write, not everything, just what matters. The things that might help the next version of you or someone else entirely. The signs, the warnings, the real names of the winds, the pattern the sheep form when danger approaches, how to tell when your echo is watching you. And one final note. If she calls to you, don't answer until you've heard your own voice first. You close the journal, tuck it back into the pouch, not to keep it, to leave it here, because this shelter isn't just for you. It's a marker, a waypost for the lost. And as you rise, the hearth flickers once, a breath of warmth, as if the room approves. You step outside. The sheep wait calmly on the slope. The wind has changed direction again. It carries the scent of loam and dry grass and rain that hasn't fallen yet. And there in the dirt just outside the door, a bell, old, rusted, but whole. You pick it up and tie it to the door frame. It doesn't ring. It just watches. That's enough. As you begin walking, the flock falls into step behind you. You don't look back. But you know if someone comes here again, lost and moon-touched and afraid, they'll find the journal. They'll read your name. They'll hear your warning. And they'll have a choice. The moon hasn't risen yet, but when she does, you'll be ready because you've stopped running and started remembering. The path you walk now isn't marked on any map, but your feet know where to fall. The soil is softer, the light more golden. Even the wind seems to move out of your way, no longer testing you, no longer asking questions it already knows the answers to. Your flock walks with quiet confidence. No bleeding, no panic. They trust you. And somewhere deep inside, you begin to trust yourself again. The hills open wide, grass ripples like wool stretched over wind, and on the horizon something rises stone and timber, old but steady. A village. You haven't seen one in cycles, days, seasons. It's hard to say. You hesitate at the ridge, then descend. As you approach, you hear no alarm bells, no shouting. No one rushes to meet you. The village is calm, waiting, not asleep, simply aware that something has changed. You pass a well, it's dry. You pass a cart. It's full of firewood, but abandoned, as if its owner stepped away mid-chore. And then you see them, the watchers, elders seated on benches outside their homes, children still as statues beneath hanging herbs. Each pair of eyes tracking you not out of fear but recognition. You nod. One woman nods back. Her eyes are milky with age, but when she lifts her hand to her heart and taps twice, you nearly drop your staff. It's the sign, the one Andres made that night at the salt circle. You return the gesture. Her lips part in a smile and she murmurs something to the boy beside her. He runs. Moments later, the village bell rings. Once, then again, not a warning, a welcome. You tether the flock near the chapel ruin at the edge of the village. The doors rotted through the altar, long since reclaimed by ivy. But something hums faintly beneath the soil here. This place is anchored. And you realize what this village is. Not a town, a crossing. A boundary between the ordinary and the echoed. A place where versions diverge, where cycles can be broken or rejoined. The villagers approach slowly, offering bread-water-wool questions. You answer only the ones that matter. Yes, the sheep are healthy. No, the moon hasn't risen tonight. Yes, you remember your name? One child, no older than 10, steps forward and hands you a stone. Smooth, flat, etched with a spiral. You look at him. He smiles, and for a moment his eyes flash black. Not evil, not haunted, just aware, a flicker of another self, another path. You take the stone, and in exchange you give him the bell from your belt, the one of straw and silence. His hands close around it as if he's always known how it should feel. You say nothing, neither does he. The exchange is complete. Later, as twilight rises, you stand at the edge of the village and watch the horizon. No moon, no Andres, just stillness. And then, a woman approaches, face hidden beneath a woolen veil, feet bare. She walks without a sound. She stops a few paces from you. You don't need to see her eyes to know who she is. She doesn't speak. Neither do you. But when she raises her hand to gesture, something strange happens. Your name doesn't rise in your throat. Hers does. And you say it, clearly, softly. Once, she shudders, then lowers her veil. It's you, but older. Not by years, by choices, by weight. She nods and turns away. You let her leave. Not because you fear her, because you finally understand her. She was never your enemy. She was your consequence. And now she's free too. You stay until night fully falls. The stars bloom like frost. And for the first time since this began, no moon rises. Just peace, just rest, just readiness. The village sleeps now. The kind of sleep that only happens when the air is thick with trust, and the wind doesn't need to knock. You sit just outside the chapel ruins, the sheep curled around you like living stones. Your staff rests across your knees. The journal lies nearby, closed but not forgotten. You look to the stars. You try to count them but lose track by the third constellation. That feels right. The sky doesn't need you to keep score. It just needs you to witness. In the grass beside you, the small bell the child now carries rings once. A gentle sound. Not a warning. A memory. You don't turn, you just listen. It fades quickly. And you smile. Because something in your chest loosens when you realize the story won't start over. Not this time. The cycles you feared, the moons you obeyed, the echoes that wore your face, they've quieted. Not ended, but shifted. They'll visit again, surely. That's how the plains breathe. But when they do, they'll find you changed. You no longer chase or run or resist. You remember? That's enough. You lie back staring at the sky, and for a moment, just a moment, you swear one star blinks at you. A farewell. A thank you. Or just the light of something ancient reaching you long after it was gone. You'll never know. And you're fine with that. Because not every story needs a door. Some just need a bell, and the will to ring it at the right time. The air grows softer now, each breath just a little slower than the last. You're lying on a warm hillside, your body sinking into the earth's gentle hold. The sheep around you are still there, breathing steady. The wind moves through the tall grass without urgency, carrying the scent of sleep and soil and something faintly herbal like time or memory. There's no danger here. The moon hasn't come. And even if she did, she'd find you different, anchored in your name, untangled from fear, unwilling to be borrowed by echoes again. The stars overhead begin to blur just slightly, not from tears, but from the soft way your eyes no longer bother to stay open. You've seen enough tonight. You've remembered enough. Let the rest come later. The staff beside you no longer feels like armor. It feels like a walking stick again. A tool, not a weapon. That's how you know you've healed. A night owl calls out once far away, and then stillness returns. Your thoughts drift like wool caught in the wind, slow, quiet, going nowhere fast. And in that slow dissolve, you feel your breath lengthen your hands, unclench your mind, loosen from the names and places it's been holding too tight. The planes will be here in the morning. So will the flock. But for now, just rest. Let the night hold you. Let the silence finish your sentences. And if the moon peeks in again, just smile. You've got your bell now. You'll know what to do. Sleep well, shepherd. The pasture is safe, and the cycle is yours.